On a freezing night in November 1966, the darkness enveloping a desolate stretch of West Virginia road was shattered by an encounter that defies logical explanation. Two young couples driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant outside Point Pleasant noticed two crimson lights glowing in the shadows near an old generator plant. As their headlights swept across the rusted structure, the lights revealed themselves to be the massive, glowing red eyes of a creature standing nearly 7 feet tall. It was not a man, and it was certainly not a bird. According to the terrified witnesses, the entity possessed large wings folded against its back and moved with a shuffling, unnatural gait. When the driver panicked and sped away down Route 62, reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour, the entity allegedly took flight, effortlessly pacing their vehicle without ever flapping its wings. This was the genesis of the Mothman, a cryptid whose sudden appearance would plunge a quiet community into profound psychological dread. The couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with Steve and Mary Mallette, drove straight to the Mason County Courthouse to report the terrifying event. Deputy Millard Halstead, who had known the young adults their entire lives and vouched for their character, noted that they were paralyzed with genuine terror. When Halstead returned to the site with the witnesses, the entity was gone, but an unsettling static filled the police radio, and a lingering sense of being watched permeated the freezing air. This initial police report transformed a bizarre roadside encounter into a documented investigation, sparking a wave of mass unease that would soon consume the entire region. The testimonies were consistent, detailed, and completely devoid of the usual hallmarks of a fabricated prank. To understand the gravity of these reports, one must examine the landscape where the phenomenon first manifested. The McClintock Wildlife Management Area, known locally as the TNT area, was a sprawling, deeply forested tract of land dotted with concrete igloos, once used to store highly explosive munitions during the Second World War. By the mid-1960s, it was a decaying labyrinth of overgrown bunkers, subterranean tunnels, and toxic runoff. It was a place already shrouded in local superstition, an isolated and eerie environment perfectly suited for hiding an unknown entity. The isolation of the TNT area provided a chilling backdrop for the escalating sightings that would soon bleed into the populated areas of Point Pleasant. Within days of the Scarberry and Mallette report, the sightings multiplied with terrifying speed. On November 16, 1966, Marcella Bennett was driving to a friend's house near the TNT area. As she exited her vehicle, a figure slowly rose from the shadows behind a parked car. Witnesses reported that the creature seemed to unfold itself, towering over the terrified woman. Bennett was so traumatized by the sight of the glowing red eyes that she dropped her infant daughter in shock, quickly recovering the child and fleeing into the house, where the family huddled in terror as the entity allegedly paced on the porch, peering through the windows. The sheer volume of similar reports from credible citizens, including volunteer firemen and respected business owners, suggested a phenomenon that could not be easily dismissed as mere hallucination. The unprecedented wave of sightings attracted the attention of journalists and researchers, most notably John Keel, an author who arrived in Point Pleasant to conduct a thorough investigative study of the unfolding events. Keel meticulously cataloged the witness testimonies, discovering a disturbing pattern of interconnected anomalies. Exploring the accounts, he noted that the Mothman sightings were frequently accompanied by reports of unidentifiable flying objects, bizarre electrical interference, and unsettling encounters with strange, identically dressed men who seemed to interrogate witnesses. Keel's presence elevated the situation from a local oddity to a major focal point for those studying unexplained anomalies, documenting a town buckling under the weight of an incomprehensible reality. The psychological toll on Point Pleasant was palpable. Citizens armed themselves, organizing nightly patrols through the TNT area in a desperate bid to hunt down the source of their terror. The air was thick with paranoia. Families reported poltergeist-like activity in their homes, phantom footsteps on their roofs, and menacing, metallic-sounding voices interrupting their telephone calls. The entity, whatever it was, seemed to be a catalyst for a broader unraveling of normalcy. The glowing red eyes became a symbol of impending doom, a nocturnal predator that hovered just at the edge of human perception, daring the residents to confront the fragility of their own reality. Despite the mounting terror, rational explanations were aggressively pursued by local authorities and skeptical biologists. The most prominent theory suggested that the witnesses were simply misidentifying a sandhill crane, a large bird with a significant wingspan and reddish coloring around its eyes, which might have migrated off its usual path. Others proposed that the creature was an unusually large barred owl, its eyes reflecting the headlights of passing cars. While these theories offered a comforting veil of normalcy, they consistently failed to account for the entity's reported 7-foot stature, its ability to pace speeding vehicles without flapping its wings, and the sheer, unadulterated terror it instilled in seasoned hunters and skeptical police officers. The witnesses themselves vehemently rejected the bird hypothesis, maintaining that what they saw was entirely unnatural. One of the most chilling and corroborative accounts occurred on the evening of November 15th, just hours before the Scarberry and Mallette encounter, roughly 90 miles away in Salem, West Virginia. Newell Partridge, a local contractor, was watching television when the screen suddenly filled with static and emitted a high-pitched whining noise. Outside, his German shepherd, Bandit, began to bark viciously toward the barn. Partridge took a flashlight and stepped into the cold night. When he shined the beam toward the barn, it reflected off 2 massive red circles that looked like bicycle reflectors. Bandit, a fearless hunting dog, darted toward the eerie lights. Partridge, gripped by an inexplicable dread, retreated into his home. Bandit never returned. The following day, Partridge read the newspaper reports from Point Pleasant and felt a cold realization wash over him. For 13 months, the sightings continued, ebbing and flowing like a dark tide over the Ohio River Valley. The creature was reportedly seen perched on the steel girders of the Silver Bridge, a vital suspension bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio. It was seen soaring over the courthouse, gliding silently above the chemical plants, and vanishing into the dense canopy of the TNT area. The town existed in a state of suspended animation, caught between the desire for the phenomenon to end and the terrifying anticipation of what it might do next. Keel and other investigators noted a growing sense of apocalyptic dread among the witnesses, a shared premonition that the entity was not merely haunting the town, but waiting for something catastrophic to occur. The Silver Bridge was a marvel of early 20th century engineering. Constructed in 1928, it was named for its gleaming aluminum paint and utilized an innovative I-bar chain suspension design. For nearly 4 decades, it served as the primary artery for commerce and travel across the Ohio River, bearing the weight of thousands of vehicles daily. However, beneath its silver exterior, a fatal flaw was silently developing. The bridge had been designed for the lighter vehicles of the 1920s, not the heavy bumper-to-bumper traffic of the late 1960s. Furthermore, the I-bar design meant that if a single crucial component failed, the entire structure would be compromised, lacking the redundancy of traditional wire cable suspension bridges. On December 15, 1967, the lingering dread in Point Pleasant materialized into unimaginable tragedy. It was the height of the Christmas shopping season, and the Silver Bridge was packed with rush-hour traffic, the cars crawling bumper to bumper in the freezing rain. At approximately 5 in the afternoon, a single microscopic stress fracture in an I-bar joint, known as I-bar 330, finally gave way under the immense strain. In a matter of seconds, the suspension chain snapped. The sound was likened to a deafening shotgun blast. Witnesses on the riverbanks watched in absolute horror as the massive steel structure violently twisted and collapsed into the dark, freezing waters of the Ohio River, taking 32 vehicles down with it. The disaster claimed 46 lives, devastating the small community. Rescue and recovery efforts continued for weeks in the treacherous, icy currents. In the immediate aftermath of the collapse, a chilling realization swept through the grieving town. The Mothman sightings, which had plagued Point Pleasant for exactly 13 months, abruptly and permanently ceased. The sudden silence of the cryptid in the wake of the tragedy gave birth to a haunting hypothesis. Was the entity a mere observer, drawn to the area by the impending catastrophe? Or was it a harbinger, a warning manifestation trying to communicate a doom that the town was incapable of understanding? Today, the documented history of Point Pleasant remains inextricably linked to the Silver Bridge collapse. The official investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board definitively cited metallurgical failure as the cause of the historical disaster, a tragic consequence of unchecked wear and an unforgiving design. Yet, the chilling synchronicity of the Mothman phenomenon cannot be easily erased from the public consciousness. The detailed witness testimonies, the widespread panic, and the sudden cessation of sightings following the collapse continue to fuel intense debate. Exploring these events forces us to confront the terrifying limits of our understanding, leaving us to wonder what unseen forces might dwell in the periphery of our vision, and what terrifying truths they might be trying to convey.